Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
Not like the rest of the country. And so it's important when we apply the dimensions to culture that we don't think just the United States or even just Bhutan, that we think about the cultures within the country. So it might be a community in eastern Bhutan that is our reference culture. And it's important to know the dimensions there. And it's important that in live oral storytelling cultures, that we understand how storytelling takes place in that culture. It's been exciting to me because I have not been exposed to Bhutanese storytelling before this conference. And so it's important for me to see how storytelling takes place. Because while there may be a method to storytelling that is very common around the world, the style is very much different in places around the world as I travel. And so it's really important that you look at how the storytelling method is employed in your particular culture, or actually I should say, not in your culture, but the culture in which you plan to have training take place in helping individuals start their businesses. Storytelling has been used since the genesis of societies. History, traditions, lore, and other important events have been related through oral stories throughout history. That continues to be the case today in oral culture societies. Societies often characterized with the term undeveloped or developing. Related to storytelling in these developing societies, Brian indicates that in oral cultures, information communicated through a narrative format has a significantly higher retention rate than when the same information is presented in the same oral cultures in a traditional lecture or presentation format. That may sound very academic to you, okay, that sentence. But what it means is that it is much more powerful to transmit your message through storytelling than through a PowerPoint presentation in oral storytelling cultures. Brown's work is strongly based on the thought presented by Ong, where he indicated that the structure of communications via traditional lecture or presentation format in literate cultures did not convey well to oral cultures where storytelling prevailed. Ong's work further indicated that while communications in oral cultures are structured, they are structured differently than those in literate cultures. And then further support for Brown's contention may be found in a previous study by Slack, where he said, research among oral communicators and rural-oriented peoples, whether in the mountains or in the cities, produced the following data. Retention among these types of people seldom was higher than 29% of the knowledge shared when communicated by means of logical and systematized outlines of the information. And this is a big however. Remember, 29% was in systematized outline. However, when a storying or chronological teaching method was used, retention rose to at least 75 to 80%. Almost tripling the retention. So I think that is further evidence that we need to employ the oral storytelling method when we are trying to communicate the teaching of enterprise development in a culturally sensitive manner. Now, the problem that we have is that there are a lot of folk tales, and you may not think that there are a lot of published folk tales. I know there's some books. I bought some books of published folk tales. But there are a lot more folk tales in your stories than there are business tales in your oral storytelling. I have not found any specific. I have found some that integrated some business ideas in some of the storytelling. But this is not uncommon throughout the world. Anywhere that I have gone, the stories have been about family values and religious morals but rarely have they been specifically aimed at community mapping. And rarely have they been about financial planning. They have almost never had direct, specific emphasis from a specific business activity, much less the training for micro and cottage and small enterprise development. So what we have to do is we actually have to go about the activity of collecting those stories because they exist. Much like we've talked about here for the folk tales. The stories exist. Much like my friend on the panel here has described, the tales exist, but there is no repository. We haven't even collected the business stories. We have collected some folk tales, but we have not collected business stories, not just in Bhutan, but not in many places. And so I believe that it's very important, much like we need the collectors of the stories for the database, I think we need collectors of the stories about business startup activities and processes. We need to have individuals that can go out into the communities that understand the business activities, that understand the 10 dimensions of culture, that can go out and talk to individuals that have started businesses in these different cultures, in these different communities throughout Bhutan and throughout the world, actually, and gather those stories. Gather the stories about how they successfully started the business. They may not know that they did community mapping, but let's talk to them about how did you go find out what product you needed to sell? How did you find out what service to provide? And that gets us to talking about community mapping, and that gathers a story. And as we gather all of these stories, we put them into a repository, and that repository can also include stories from people that started businesses that failed. Because it's extremely important to understand what did not work, as important as it is to understand what did work. And so we will have this repository or another data bank of business tales, and then we will be able to take those business tales, relate them to the culture with the dimensions of culture in that specific culture, and then we can have people, people that are trained in business development go and help educate and train the people in the community, particularly people, young people. These students here have counterparts in every community in Bhutan. Many of those students in those areas in Bhutan, at some point, are probably going to find their way to Thimphu. This is the big city. This is where they think the jobs are. The only jobs at home are on the farm, are the agriculture. That is not unique to Bhutan. It is in many countries around the world. Young people leaving their rural communities and going to the city in hopes of finding the dream job. But if we can provide the training in the rural communities, in these cultures, in a way that actually speaks to their culture and that actually can help them create businesses that will give them a livelihood, then we give them opportunity to stay within their culture, to help that culture prolong itself as we go out through the generations. And I think that it's very, very important that that we do this. The gathering of the stories is just the first part, though. And I'm an academic, therefore I'm a little bit too scientific in what I propose, in that gathering the stories is important. Organizing the stories into the training materials where they're culturally sensitive is extremely important. Then we would want to test that framework once the stories have been gathered and put together into that database for the communities or the cultures in Bhutan. We'd want to do training in Bhutan. We would want to be able to go into those communities. And when I say we, it could be anybody that knows the business processes. But then it's important to evaluate the framework to make sure that it really does work in that culture. Now, I have a fourth item down at the bottom after those three steps. I don't think that we can wait until we do the scientific study to prove that the oral storytelling method for communicating culturally sensitive training for micro-enterprise and cottage enterprise and small business development works better than a lecture with PowerPoint slides. I believe that there's enough evidence in the literature that already shows that the type of material we're talking about is much better conveyed, almost 3 times more retention when you use oral storytelling. And so even while we need to try and prove that it's the best way to go, it should not stop us from continuing to build this database and continuing to go out and build these anecdotes about storytelling in business and gathering how people did this. I'm going to finish, and actually there's only part 1. I just had to do that. I know it's not that funny, but there is no part 2 to my conclusion, okay? If there's a part 2, it's this last paragraph. The proposition of this paper is that a storytelling model for culturally sensitive cottage and small enterprise development training will be an effective means of conveying training material in the Bhutanese culture. Only after the 3 additional steps that are outlined above have been completed will it be possible to statistically show that the proposition of this paper is supported. Nevertheless, it is anticipated that the training will yield positive anecdotal results towards the goals of Bhutan 2020. Culturally sensitive economic development is imperative in Bhutan. This training is an important step towards making possible economic development that is in harmony with gross national happiness, sustains morals and values, and aids in the creation of community. Thank you.
Okay, I told you stories about a hunter and a tiger again, but it's way different from what I told you yesterday. Okay, let me begin. Many years ago, hundreds of years ago, there was a village in the middle of the forest. And in the village lived a hunter and his wife. His wife was pregnant. And like yesterday's hunter, he had to go to forest to gather food. And when he went to forest to gather food, to kill animals and bring home any edible forest products, he had to leave his wife home. There was no one. They were expecting their first child. And so he went. He was in the forest, way up in the mountains, in the thick forest. On every trip that he met in the forest, he spent like 3 or 4 days in the forest. And on one of the trips, which was very close to the delivery time, it was almost time for his wife to deliver, he had to go, he had to feed his wife, he had to bring home healthy food. He spent a night under the tree. Like yesterday's hunter, he took permission from the tree. He said, I'm going to take shelter here. He took permission from the spirit of the tree. This is why even now, we believe, I want to pause here a bit and tell you, for those of you who are not coming from farming background, I don't think you probably experience, but when you are traveling and when you're taking shelter in the cave or under a tree, you always take permission from the tree spirit. If you have drinks carrying with you, you always make offerings first to the spirit. Or something, no? So this is one of the reasons why we do that still. And so there he was lying there under the tree. He had his dinner, some meat for that night, and he was trying to sleep. But as soon as he was trying to sleep, there were these noises he heard. And this story is also from the time when trees and plants could talk to each other. The spirits were talking to each other, rock spirits and water spirit and the bird spirit. Everyone could talk and communicate to each other. So as he was trying to sleep, about to go to sleep, there was this lot of this, not really cacophony, but a lot of these noises that he heard. Calling each other. Spirits were calling each other. Someone new has arrived in the world. Someone newborn has arrived. Newborn is in the world. Let's go and feed him. Let's go and decide his fate. They were telling. But this tree spirit, the spirit of the tree where this guy was there, she was saying that, well, I cannot go today because I have a guest here. I have a guest that I have to look after. So you guys go and decide the fate of this newborn. And so the spirit of the tree did not go. This is also again one of the reasons why you have to take permission. if you take permission from the spirits, they will give you protection when you're traveling in the forest, when you're camping in the forest. And so the spirit of the tree did not go, but the rest of the spirits went down. And it was night time, and they took the whole night. And in the morning, when all the spirits came back, the spirit of the tree where the hunter was sleeping, she asked, "So what kind of fate did you decide for the newborn?" And I guess because the husband was away and she was all alone, kind of trying to recover from the pain, she could not make the offerings or anything to the spirits when the newborn was born. And the spirits were not happy when they got to the village. And they decided a very, very bad fate for her. For the newborn, it was a son. And the tree spirit, as I mentioned a short while ago, asked, "So what kind of fate did you decide for this newborn?" Well, one said, we fated him that he would die when the small piece of wood in the hearth is burned completely. He was shaken up, Hunter was shaken up. "This must be my son, so I must really rush to the village." And the tree spirit asked, what other things did you decide for this newborn? And said, if the child does not die when the small piece of wood in the hearth is completely burned, he will die from a tiger's bite. Tiger will kill him. Said the other spirits told the tree spirit. He was really worried. The hunter was really worried. So my wife must have given birth to a baby. This must be the fates that the spirits have decided must be for my son, for my child. And so he rushed down with whatever he had collected, whatever foods he had collected. And when he got to the house, it was his wife who delivered to his son. And as the spirits were saying, the piece of wood is a piece of firewood in the hearth. A piece of wood in the firewood in the hearth was almost completely burnt. It was just little piece left. So he immediately picked up that piece and dipped it into the water, because if he allows that to be completely burned, his child will be dead. So he saved the child from the first fate. He dipped it into the water, nipped off the fire, and hid the small piece somewhere else. And then the child was growing, and as the child was growing, maybe he was about 5-6 years old. Child wanted to do business. The boy wanted to become a businessman. Every year, as neighbors left for India for trading, he also wanted to go. But I guess they came from a very poor background. Father said, "Well, what kind of business are you going to do? I mean, we have nothing. Please don't go." And he persuaded the son to stay. But when he reached the age of 15, the son really insisted, and the father decided to send the son with his neighbors. And so the son left with his neighbors. He was sent with his neighbors. But father requested the neighbors to take care of his son. I mean, on the trip when they were walking to India, when they were trekking to India, he requested them not to leave the son either behind or not to send him ahead of the group. So they always kept him in between. But the first night, because the son was living for the first time from house, the father was really worried. So the first night of the trip, the father followed to the camp to the site where they were camping. And at the camp, everyone was sleeping, and his son, the neighbors really took care of his son, and he was sleeping in between. He waited there, worried that something might happen to his son, who was out of the house for the first time. And as he was waiting there, tiger started roaring from the mountains, and tiger was coming down and down. And it was getting closer and closer to the camp. And he was up on the tree with his bow and arrows, and he was equipped. He was worried, and tiger came down, and finally it got to the camp. And as tiger was just about to get to the camp, because there were so many people sleeping, right? And the boy was in the middle. There was this little rat who picked up a leaf and dropped it on the boy, the son of this hunter. The tiger was approaching, and the father was worried that the tiger might know that this was his son. He removed the leaf with his bow, tip of the bow. But again the rat picked up a leaf and dropped it on the son of this hunter. And the father knew that he was ill-fated, he was fated that he would die, and he would get killed by a tiger. So he shot the tiger, and tiger was dead. Tiger was killed right on the spot there. And in the morning when they woke up, when everyone woke up, he told his son, "My dear son, I followed you because I was worried that you might some mishaps might happen to you." And he shot the tiger. You see, this tiger came to kill you here. It wanted to eat you up. Son could not believe that. You mean this tiger was going to kill? The tiger was dead with his mouth snarling. It had its teeth out. The son could not take his father's words. He said, "You mean this tiger was going to kill me?" And he kicked it on the teeth of the tiger. And the son had the infection from that teeth, and he died. So the moral of the story is that whatever happened will happen. I mean, in Zonghai it said, "Kebilele chomite." So if you're fated to, if something is supposed to happen to you, it will happen. But I don't know if the moral is as exciting as yesterday's, but I thought I will end the session with this story. Thank you very much for that.
군가지 세시 비미디 나서고디 세주순이 담바라니 카들레 나첸노 미술 우주점 세시네 아 수디 모토미기 해마 그다 나기 군다치 이기 꿀에 나기 못지지 나 아주 죽으시니까 시와다도 나 모시지가라 나 몸이시고 니지 고공은 몸이시 나 누가 나도 1941기 그레듀에이션 쪽이 클래스 시다도기 빨리 가기 근데 아무보다 나기 다도 나는 캐치들이 잉리시가 수도 준비 나기 잉리시가 수르스래 중간에 우리 잉리시가 잡아진 롱카 좋아하는 랭카 봉기 우리 칸마시 롱카 좋아하는 게 무체 유니버시티도 디레텐데 나기 세로 다도니 모티치 수와친 내가 아니 not say 기적 수리나 이게 괜히 했니 고통을 누가 마음에 추상 땅다 추상이 불러한 레처 떠오르기 아시 나게 누가 다시한테 따위 남들로 녹창배 두강같이 둘러말로 레벨민도 대수승지 나중에 부수기 고하지 레벨민도 존속민도 존속 레 독자 까중로 닥터 펜줄로 쓰면서 고놈기 존속매 고놈기 갑잡 고놈기 사제배 어째 약함날로 아니면 약이 따위 그 지리따오다 생직이 맨주다도 좀맨 아니기 드로스 숙세 마도기 노다 생기당 같이 미쳐그렇지 아니 별로 땡기배 너무디 관계주가 나타나 도전을 많이네 그 누가 황해 문도 로대 문도 안데까지 또 안데 스페셜 합 배우다로 옛날 뭐 시주셰 주나 레벨 문도 이 스페셜 합상 되는 기타 뭐 하는데 독지 기시 텐트 드레스는 록 잡래 유나 주고는 같이 스페셜 기타 가야면 제고 몸 포고가 주도 몇 중에 안전에 때집에 대리치기 나기 쉬미디 생각이 작대배 잘 나수 부수 범수 아주 지길라 밑에 dembe 같이 카치 엔두디 카치 약합디 시 나주 부수 라바이 나와노세 40, 50 years 기잡래 you become minister you become MC you become 몽게야 유칼라바디로 시로 카지 카도 못치나 좀 안을 때집에 카치 주디 엔두이 엔두디 내시면 좀 말해 빼 가했다 먹고 빼 아줬다 난 갈았다 남매 에리 나 갈았다지 땀쓰는 놈 힌트 봉 따지왜 두 가지 힌트 봉 따지왜 아기 주 던져다 불안마 깝대배 몸 수단